Hello, this is Henry Jenkins speaking to you from the rooftop of my building in beautiful downtown Los Angeles. I'm very honored to be joining you today to discuss the globally significant topic of AI and creativity. Greetings to my friends from Kazakhstan. This is Henry Jenkins speaking to you from downtown Los Angeles in California in the United States, and I'm honored to join you for today's event. I'm asked to share some thoughts and reflections on AI, creativity, and the civic imagination. A creative artist. So there was a lot of writing at the time this video first came out about why Wes Anderson, and I found this critical response particularly helpful. It says most cinemaphiles immediately recognize his distinctive look. He has plenty of familiar touchstones for humorists who are trying to mimic him. The use of chapter titles and other on-screen text, a love of elaborate fixed tableaus, characters with minimal emotional effect, and a clipped, precise way of speaking. No artbot is going to actually replace Wes Anderson. His work comes from a distinctive voice and artistic mindset. Individual still images aren't going to replace entire movies, and Anderson's films are much more than just the visual imagery. But even so, it's easy to look at the images and see how readily AI art generators can devalue an individual artist's style and voice. All the signature stylings Anderson has been refining for more than 25 years can be reduced to a single repetitive joke, to the point where his own actual movie stills may not stand out much in the mix. So we can see here the tensions that already have started to emerge around the idea of creativity and AI. On the one hand, there's a certain defensiveness, legitimate defensiveness of the rights of artists and the threat that AI poses to the future employment of visual artists. There's a concern about the mechanization of artistic production and the ways in which artistic expression may be devalued by this. And I think those are important concerns, and I want us to take it seriously. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here and argue there's another side to this, which is that these AI pieces depend on the visual literacy of a widespread public that is able to read who Wes Anderson is, what Lord of the Rings is, and to imagine how they might juxtapose to create something new. It's a site for grassroots innovation and what we might call vernacular creativity. It's allowing significant numbers of people who may not have had the capacity to express themselves through visual language before, the chance to use visualization to explore ideas and to create something dramatically different than might have existed in the world before. I don't know how to weigh the positives and negatives against each other. I think that's a discussion we need to be having. I'm glad to hear your conference is taking up some of these questions. But I think it's important not to quickly rush to judgment and to value one side of this argument at the expense of the other, whichever side it may be. So here are some more examples. Here's William Dafoe as Smeagol, as Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Here we see scenes from another project of Stanley Kubrick's Star Wars, and we see some tropes you may recognize, aspects of style from 2001, A Space Odyssey, or another of the Kubrick films layered on top of. So I've been studying vernacular creativity, grassroots creativity, fan creativity for more than 35 years. I started my first real venture in that direction was the book Textual Poachers, Television Fans, and Participatory Culture. Here's the original cover. Next to it is the cover of the 25th anniversary edition, and next year we will issue a 35th anniversary edition. And we see there a progression of a shift in fan art from hand-drawn art to art that's created involving Photoshop. We're still trying to figure out what will be on the cover of the new edition. My research group has been trying to understand how people are theorizing what vernacular creativity looks like in the age of AI. And we've interviewed a number of different art students, artists about their theories and ideas about AI. And I'm just going to share three of them here that I think seem representatives. The first one says, for groups who do knitting or crochet or things like that, the AI images they're generating are like, here's a giant cat sofa, a knitted giant cat sofa, and things like that. They're engaging with art in a way that they couldn't do before. So they are picturing, wouldn't it be interesting if these things were happening? AI is allowing people to explore artistic views that they couldn't do before, which is good for them. It's bad for theoretical artists that they would have been commissioning to do that art, although these people wouldn't have ever commissioned them to do that art in the first place. So here we see brought together this argument about grassroots, expanding the skill set of everyday people to express themselves in a visual language versus the question of the artist being displaced by the work that they're doing. There's another artist. Some of my acquaintances and even friends were like, this is stealing people's art. And I was like, you need to think about this because they're not really appropriating objects. They're analyzing the characteristics of objects, admittedly, without the permission of the people who created those objects and without allowing them to say whether they wanted their objects to be analyzed in ways that could be used to deconstruct things. But it's slightly different from old school theft, and it's important to criticize them for the right thing. So you need to know how they appropriate, what they're appropriating, and how they're doing it, and what's unethical about it, end quote. So here we're getting into the thickets of what constitutes our cultural reservoir. What right do people have to draw on shared cultural traditions, to be inspired by other works, to create things that are in dialogue with existing artworks, and to what degree should creators have control over their intellectual property? And this is going to be a fundamental debate that happens again and again as we're seeing the perfection of these tools. Third quote, who owns the art? That's an interesting one. I'm in the world of having very little copyright, so I would prefer it if nobody owns the art. And the artist didn't have to monetize the art to be able to make a living. And if that were the case, it would be nice to throw all art into the public domain straight away, and society and culture ought to own the art rather than an individual. I don't know what the economics will look like. So again, this question of who owns art, what is the rights of the public to participate in the creation, circulation, remixing of art, and what is the right of artists to determine what gets done with their brain children? So these are the kinds of debates we're going to be seeing more and more of. Here's another example of Los Angeles with cars, but without people. Our hope, of course, had been that we would see a Los Angeles with public transportation, but we see a little hints of that here, but still cars are running along the freeway with or without humans. And we tried repeatedly to do this. Each time the Statue of Liberty ends up on top of the Great Wall of China, rather than bend the knee to a foreign government. Statue of Liberty on an American AI program invariably ends up on top of China. We had a somewhat better luck getting Uncle Sam. And so when I was corresponding back and forth while this discussion was taking place, I was corresponding back and forth with my son, who wondered if it was because the Statue of Liberty was a statue. the David problem again. Could we imagine Uncle Sam as a symbol in the United States who is more human and therefore more flexible and capable of kneeling? And this one's interesting because you see hints of Chinese costuming interwoven with the costume of Uncle Sam. We also found it fairly easy to generate images of then President Biden hugging Xi, the leader of China. That kind of movement back and forth between the United States, signs of friendship between the United States and China was possible. So again, the failure of AI, what it could and couldn't show us, generated some interesting discussions around how we think about the civic as we draw on our own lay theory of what's going on in the magical black box that constitutes AI. So I end that with those sets of sort of provocations for thinking about this question of AI, creativity, and the civic. What does our current thinking about AI represent? How does the limits of AI encourage us to think creatively and in different ways? And what is the potential of AI as a tool for vernacular creative expression? And is there going to be a future where AI can be seen as an art, but a particular kind of art that we yet don't have language to think about? And with that, I end.